2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brannon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us. How can I trust God when He put me in a bad relationship? Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers.
We're therapists.
And we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin.
What is going on, you guys? Tyler again. I'm on my own again today. Brannon is traveling home, and he wasn't quite able to make it in time from going to support a friend who is getting married. So hopefully he had an awesome weekend. He's a good friend. He traveled from where we live in Utah down to, I think it was Arizona. So pretty dedicated friend there. And hopefully he'll be back with us on Wednesday. So a couple of things just to mention really quickly. Number one, thank you to those of you who give us reviews and subscribe. We are able to reach more people as a result of those things, and we really appreciate your support in doing those things. And so if you feel inclined, the ways that you can help us that are no cost to you is to just either write us a review wherever you listen, or if you're on YouTube with us, subscribe. And if you happen to be on the live chat, we would love to have your participation. I need to apologize there was a commenter last week. I was by myself, and we had a commenter, I think the title was Flo Morgan, and you asked a question, and I was kind of lost doing this thing all by myself, and I didn't see all of your stuff until it was right towards the end of the episode. And so Flo Morgan, I did copy your question, and on one of the next episodes that we have where we don't have an actual caller, we'll get to your question. So hopefully that'll still be pertinent to you when we get to that. And thank you for your question. So today we have a caller I'm excited to have on. We have Louise with us. Louise, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Glad you're here with us. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about you, your situation, and then ask your question.
Okay, so background-wise, I grew up in foster care, but it wasn't a traditional foster care situation. I actually grew up in a convent. So my parents were nuns, and there were two main nuns that took care of me. So I didn't have a good example of like an actual relationship between a man and a woman, like a healthy romantic relationship, right? I saw friendship, I saw all of this stuff, how to be a parent, things like that, but I never saw an intimate relationship between two individuals. Fast forward, I'm now married, 2 kids, been married for almost 3 years, and we We'll have been together for 10 years in July. And, you know, at this point, it is my relationship with my husband is not great. He is not a bad person by any means, and I am not a flawless person by any means, right? So we want to make that very clear that I have made a lot of mistakes in the 10 years, right? I met him in my early 20s. So there was a lot of things that I was still learning, like how to be a human, um, and, how to associate myself in a world that was not necessarily made for someone like me. And the same thing for my husband, right? Like he came from a similarly tumultuous background, so he had a lot of ways to learn how to navigate the world. But now we're a lot older, we're a decade in, and we're having this issue where I have, I'm trying to say this in a nice way, but surpassed him career wise, right? So I make more money, I have higher level certifications, and it has caused tension because now I'm the main breadwinner. I'm the only breadwinner. He does not work. He seems to be in this like weird depression, but when we talk about it, he sounds very positive, but no changes are made. And I, because of my background and how I grew up, I have a very intimate relationship with God, right? And I believe that you live a life as a walking prayer, and I have daily, constant conversations. And for me, a lot of it is just to ground myself and keep myself in reality, right? Because of my background, I do have PTSD. So I do get in complex PTSD. So I get triggered by random stuff that doesn't make sense. And I don't take medication for it. I've been in therapy since I was 2. So it's a whole thing. But I'm very self-aware of who I am and how I react to things because I don't want to react poorly. And I often look for direction and I seek for direction. And because I don't have family, I don't get a lot of direction. And so then a lot of my concern is directed towards God, right? And it turns, and I've done lots of therapy, but it doesn't seem to be getting anywhere. And so then I see myself becoming angrier and angrier with God about how did I end up here, right? Like I have already beat so many odds. And yet here I am recreating this generational curse of bad marriages, right? Which was never my intention. I do not believe in divorce. I don't believe in, anything other than once you get married, that is your partner and you stick to it and you work it out. But there, 3 times we've been to couples therapy and there's nothing, right? No meaningful change. And, so now I feel bitter and angry, and the resentment isn't towards my husband. It's almost towards God, because I trusted that God would put me in a loving, him-centered relationship, and it just seemingly didn't happen. And
Got you. So help if you can. You don't have to air too much dirty laundry if you don't want to, but what, you obviously referenced the work discrepancy, the training discrepancy. What else in your marriage is not working to the point that it feels like a bad marriage?
There's been a history of physical violence in the 10 years that's happened. It's a lot of like name calling from his part. That has gone down a lot. That was a big issue for a really long time. It's gone down a lot, but still happens. And then, like housework, I work full time, but I'm still the main house taker, right? Like I take care of the house. He does like dishes every once in a while and mainly just does laundry, and then keeps our youngest from destroying the house, which I appreciate and don't want to discredit at all, because staying at home with the kid is very hard. And I'm fully aware of that. But there's also that give and take that isn't happening.
Got you. Is it pretty frequent with some of these other things, the criticism, name calling, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. And it's to a point where I don't want to be involved, right? I don't want to engage. A lot of it is just like, okay, shutting down the conversation, and it's almost unintentional but intentional stonewalling, where I just have to, I'm not engaging in this because I already know where it's going, right? And I'm not interested. And sometimes I will say that, and it doesn't change anything, right? Like I'm very vocal. And I practiced my whole life, right? Setting these boundaries. And I set boundaries, but it doesn't matter. Very much a boundary pusher where it's like, right, but right. And then it becomes more, which I often have to walk away. So
Got you. So even though you know you're doing it, you acknowledge that on your side of things, almost as a survival technique, you stonewall, which then creates distance kind of in the relationship. He probably feels like there's nothing for him to come to or press against. I don't know.
yeah.
He's not here. But then that fuels more disconnection between the two of you. And so now you're basically two people living in the same home, but not really having any kind of real connection.
Yeah, yeah. And it's disheartening because it's not that I don't love him, right? Like I married him for a reason and I had children with him for a reason. And I want to believe that there is a possibility that this will get better. And maybe it's, if it's a matter of I need to continue to be self-aware and continue to make the positive changes in my life to then example the behavior, right? So hopefully that it will rub off because if you can lead a horse to water, but you can't get him to drink, right? And I feel like that's a big, point in my relationship is that I can example all the behaviors, but if he doesn't want to do it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I have a couple of thoughts on that. Before I do that, can you just tell me? I mean, you said you still love him. You obviously married him for a reason. You chose to have children with him for a reason. What are some of those reasons?
His kindness. He was loving, he was kind, and he still is. Don't get me wrong, I say was, but he still is. He has this intense ability to be very loving and kind to me and very understanding. And, I work in medicine, so I work a lot. And I also, unfortunately, have very strange hours, and he's always supported that with me. The home, as far as like my kids go, they aren't needing anything. They don't want for anything. He's very kind to them, very aware of their needs. So, and because of that, I there was no question whether I was having kids with him, right? I knew he was going to be an attentive dad, but I didn't understand the level of complexity that having a partner would be. And I think that that's where I'm very hung up because I never saw this level of partnership, right? So.
Got you. Okay. So I'm hearing maybe three things and maybe there's more. So help me. The first one is you're saying a part of me just growing up acknowledges that I've never really had a good demonstration of what an actual good marriage would look like. And so I'm trying to learn that. I'm open to learning those things, but I don't know what I don't know. That's part of it. You're also feeling frustrated inside the relationship because it feels like, for lack of a better term, it feels like to you, there's not an equal yoking in terms of what you're both pouring into the relationship. And then the third part is that then leads to you having a wrestle or a strain with your relationship with God, which is typically a close relationship, but right now you're feeling some anger or some resentment.
Yeah, that's a great summarization.
Okay. All right. So we could go lots of different directions with this. The first direction that I'm kind of thinking about and wondering about a little bit is just inside of your marriage, having not really experienced it by watching it too much. What are the ways that you've tried to learn about how to show up in a relationship and what to expect in a relationship that you would be in a married relationship?
Books, lots of books. Love language, the love languages. I think it's like the 5 rights or something like that. And there is a book called Trust by Ian Van Zant. Read that multiple times. YouTube videos. I've done lots of very extensive counseling. Like I said, we've done 3 different types of couples counseling on top of that. So as much as I can, gathering resources. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And that's awesome. And I'll mention a few more here for our listeners and also for you. You can go back and listen. I know you're probably not in a spot to take notes right now, but some of the ones that we recommend frequently is, of course, this gets beat to death on our show, but The Anatomy of Peace by the Arbinger Institute is a great book for relationships, all relationships. something like Love Sense by Susan Johnson would, I think, really speak to maybe some of the things you're running into. Another book called Hold Me Tight that she wrote as well could be helpful with that. And then another one that I don't always recommend, but could be helpful in opening up some conversation with your husband, is one by last name Harley called His Needs, Her Needs. And that might just open several kinds of discussions that you guys could have together as it relates to that. Now, what I wonder is happening is when you have these kinds of like conversations with him or approach him about the lack of effort in the relationship that you feel like you're receiving, or when you feel yourself starting to kind of shut down, where do you turn? Where do you go?
Like internally, externally, or
Both.
um well, so I think that two different things happen because those are kind of like two different reactions in myself. So if I'm shutting down, oftentimes there is no place that I go per se. It's more just the acknowledging that like I am not going to exist here. So then I either go into my phone or I am, I start cleaning, start cooking, busy mind stuff so that I don't think about anything. But as far as like, when I start really getting like frustrated with my environment, a lot of it is, like one is this correct? Do I have the right to feel this upset in this, right? Because sometimes we can feel upset and it's not the situation, it's other things. But as the situation builds, I'm like, okay, yes, this is what I'm feeling. I'm acknowledging this. I'm looking for things that are confirming this, and I'm trying to be conscious of like confirmation bias, right? Because I'm not trying to reconfirm something bad that's happening if nothing bad is happening. And eventually, though, if I find enough confirmation, that's when I go to him, right? And I'm like, okay, this, this, we need to sit down and have a conversation because this is out of control, right?
Yes. And then when you have that kind of conversation, when you go to him, if I was to be able to kind of watch that interplay like on a movie screen, what would I see and hear?
So initially, it's me just how I'm talking to you, right? Like I'm going to be very upfront, and unfortunately, because I have that like lack of interpersonal, like marriage relationship background, I kind of sometimes treat things like business. So I'm very much like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. I do the sandwich. You're really good at this. We're really struggling right here, right now. I really need support with this because I for whatever. But I'm really grateful that you're doing this, right? And so I sandwich it. That's the first attempt. Generally, it takes 2, 3, 4 attempts before I'm being heard. And by the time I'm at that fourth or fifth attempt, now I'm angry. Right now, I don't have that level of control that I had before because this is, up to, 3, 4 weeks later that we're still having the same conversation. And then, you get tears, you get potentially mean words, right? And from both sides. And then it's a breakdown of communication. We step away, we try to have another conversation. Either it works or it doesn't.
Gotcha. Okay. And his response to all of this is just to respond kindly through all of that up until the third or fourth or fifth try, or does he go into a shell? Does he get defensive? Like what happens?
A lot of defensiveness, and I can say that even on both sides, right? Like there could be something in the house that could equally be my concern, but for whatever reason I've assigned it to him, right? And so then I get angry because I'm like, you didn't, do this. And then he's like, well, why didn't you? And I'm like, well, how dare you assume that I would be doing that, right? So this defensiveness can come from both sides. But I think the biggest one for him is he shuts down eventually because, I think he sees it as a shame point when that's not the intention, right? Like, I'm not saying this to shame you, make you feel bad, right? Like, it's because something needs to change. And I often find that he shuts down, he sees it as an attack. And I try my hardest to not use attacking words, right? Like you are, or absolutes, like you always, things like that. I really try my hardest not to do that because I want to leave room for change, but I'm not perfect. So I probably do use absolutes sometimes, right? And then that can cause him to really shut down where he's like, well, you're saying I never do this when I know I do this, right? So
And then
things
you
like
guys
that
are
too.
fighting about how often it happens rather than about the principle that you brought that you just wanted to have addressed.
Yeah, the semantics are the biggest problem often in
Yeah.
the fights.
Yeah, that's a really, really common strategy when shame is in the picture because it distracts away from what feels like the actual attack. So, if you come to me and you're like, "Hey, Tyler, like I'm really struggling because I thought we had agreed that because I'm gone all day, you're going to make sure that the kitchen stays clean or whatever." And then I go into, well, I do clean the kitchen, and you're like, well, not really. It's like not very often. It's like, and then let's fight about how many times last week it got cleaned rather than, nevertheless, here's the real issue. What's underneath even that? What's underneath the conversation that makes you want to bring it up in the first place? It's in this case, it's like, hey, I don't want to resent you. And I'm resenting you because we made an agreement with one another and you're not seeming to follow through on your agreement. And that makes me feel disrespected, devalued, unimportant, whatever else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And really, then that then comes into play the trust, right? If you tell me you're going to do something, and I trust that you're going to do it, and then you don't, and there's a consistently where you say you're going to do something and you consistently don't do something, I'm then going to take your word as nothing, right? Because you are not proving to me that you have meaning behind what you're saying. And then, right, that then I become resentful. But on top of that, I stop trusting you. On top of that, what you say to me then becomes less in my mind because you are just talking to talk. You're not talking because you actually find value in it. And that's where I go in my head, at least.
Yeah, which is a natural place to be going in all of that. And then it makes sense that you'd start feeling all as a result of that frustration and that resentment, then you'd start to look for other strategies to try to cope, which then leads to what you said is your stonewalling or whatever else.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So one of the strategies, just really quickly, this is kind of a side note from where I really want to go with you is that in those kinds of conversations, when you run into something with your partner and you can tell that it's kind of hitting their shame, one of the strategies is to distract into the semantics of everything. And if you can go into the conversation knowing what the core emotions and principles are that you're bringing to the conversation, broken record back to the principles and the emotions rather than getting stuck in the semantics.
Yeah.
So, well, you did it 3 times. I did it 3 times last week. It was like, nevertheless, what I'm saying is that I don't feel important. So let's talk about that part. I'm not being seen. Okay. I'm not being valued. I don't care how many times it was last week. Well, this and this and this. Well, yes, of course. But nevertheless, let's address this feeling. Let's address this principle. Let's make sure that we're on the same page together. Let's address trust, and I want to make sure you understand what it's like for me when you say something and don't follow through with it.
Yeah.
So use that as a pullback. If you can keep yourself rational and not going into your own kind of flooded or shameful states too, the principles and the emotions are the cornerstone of the conversation. Right. So then you can kind of keep your feet planted and try to direct that conversation in a way that can be productive for as long as you can until one or both of you are too flooded. And then it's okay at that point to say, hey, we're taking a break. Let's get calm. And hopefully, you have a place to go and get grounded, get your perspective back. And hopefully he would do the same. If he doesn't, that's going to be a whole different story. Yeah. I'm also wondering another thing, and maybe this is something that crosses your mind already, but this is something that's really common in couples is sometimes you're in a relationship with each other and one of you kind of starts to see a pathway forward that you want to take. And you start working on yourself. You start growing, you start learning, you start improving, you start trying to bring back new ideas. And the other partner sometimes lags behind. And that often it's like I picture it like a rubber band. There's like tension that starts to be put on the rubber band between the two people. And at that point, sometimes the person who's trying to grow, trying to improve will almost put a governor on themselves or even back up to avoid the tension. But then that only fuels more hopelessness and resentment because they're too afraid that if they keep growing, eventually the rubber band's going to snap and it's going to break. Does that apply at all here to the way you're looking at things or your situation?
Applied and definitely felt almost every single day. So, yeah. very relevant.
What's that experience like for you to be kind of stuck in that tense rock and a hard spot?
Disheartening. Disheartening is the biggest word that I have, because, you go into a relationship with this idea of where you're going to grow to. And then, like you said, one surpasses the other one, but then it becomes this massive shift where, right, like if I were to meet him today, he would not be an option in my book, right? And it's more because of how he presents himself and his own, choice to get more education and better himself, right? And that's really, problematic in my mind, because I want my children to grow up and see both of their parents successful. Both of their parents worked hard on themselves, and it's not happening. And I will go as far. I've written resumes. I've put in, like this job stuff for him. Like his last 3 jobs I got for him, basically got the interviews for him. And then, I become a stump. I know that sounds weird, but eventually I just can't, right? Emotionally, I'm so overcome when I look at my reality sometimes that I'm just like, I just need to sit here and I just have to be, because it hurts so bad.
Yeah. You said you become a stump. You mean, that's what you mean? You just kind of like shut down? Is that what you mean by that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't do anything. I like, the enjoyment of life kind of goes away because you have a partner to do things with your partner. But right, if your partner's limiting the ability to do things with them, then it, becomes a circle of problems.
And now you're stuck in a place of having enough water under the bridge with this partner and enough desire to want to stay in the relationship and enough love for him. But now you're almost making conscious choices to not continue to grow because you kind of know what the outcome might be if you keep growing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it is that outcome. And I felt guilty. I mean, like when I got my last certification, it was a very intensive, like year program. It was something that was supposed to be 2 years. It was pushed into a year, very intensive program. And, I was gone a lot. Right. And he dealt with all of it. And, I'm so grateful for that. But then all of a sudden, not only does that change, our life in a lot of ways, but it also changes our social status, right? Like I just changed our tax bracket within the last year, but that also means then that he has this idea of what that means for us. But I have a very strict idea in my mind because I'm the one making the money, right? Like, and he's talking about his hobbies and like starting a whiskey, buying hobby, and he works super part-time at a gun store, and so like buying more guns, and it's like, but those things do not matter in my head, right? Because like ultimately we need to pay bills, we need to work on savings so we can buy a house, and all of these rational things, whereas he's like, oh, frivolous, and that makes it really hard too, because then it's like, so are you using me, right? Like, do you see me as like some like cash cow, or you're like, oh yeah, I'll just stick with her because I'll get whatever I want. And, then again, it comes back to resentment and anger and distrust. And again, yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. This is okay. So a couple of thoughts going through my mind. It sounds like you're already trying to do this, but the formula, when you're in a situation like this, where you're kind of in that rock and a hard spot, you ask yourself some questions. The first one is, what can I currently do to invite things to go right? And am I doing everything in my power to invite things to go right or change the situation?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've racked your brain 1,000 times on this, but that's the first thing, because I have control over that. I can make choices with that. And so it's like, hey, I might go have that conversation that's going to go awkwardly or kind of try to be distracted in other places, but I'm going to do it because I feel like I need to speak my values in order to not resent, and to also invite him to come along to the new spaces I want to go. I might.
Yes.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I was just agreeing, because there is, right? Like I have this idea of where I want him to be and where I want us to be, and I want him to come along, and I include him in all of this. And then it just feels like based off of his actions, he's uninterested almost. Right.
Yeah, right.
And then, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're doing everything you can, and this is important, not because for sure, you might be able to change the outcome by doing whatever you can to invite things to go right or invite things to improve, try to facilitate change with what you have control over. But by doing that, even if nothing changes, you then have the ability to at least kind of go into yourself and say, I'm doing everything I know how. And there's like a peace of mind that comes with that and a groundedness that comes with that. And then it leads to the second question, which is, now that I'm doing what I can to invite and facilitate the change, is there anything about my situation that I could change how I feel about it and suffer less? And sometimes you might find something, I don't, I'm going to watch your facial expressions when I say this, but maybe you're able to fully change your perspective and say, I am so grateful that my kids have that masculine presence in their home all the time, regardless of whether or not the housework gets done. It's a price that I'm willing to pay to not have any help around the house, just to have him there with the kids. I don't know how that sits with you or not.
It seems it's what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's giving excuses for behavior.
So it doesn't sit well with you then. You're not going to change how you feel with that, but that's the idea. Could you think of a few other ways of looking at your current situation, knowing you're doing what you can to change it, and find ways that you could feel differently about it that would allow you to suffer less. And sometimes you will, and sometimes you won't.
Yeah, well, so actually, one of the biggest things I'm doing right now, I am decluttering my whole house. Like I'm literally look like a crazy person this past weekend because I'm just like, I think a big contention point, right, is the housework. Well, what's the best way to reduce housework? Well, reduce the stuff that needs to actually be cleaned, right? And reduce the amount of stuff we have because we have, a whole bunch of clutter. Kids grow fast out of toys, shoes, clothes, so we get that out of the way. And then all of the unnecessary items that we have, right? Are there things that we're holding on to that we don't necessarily want? So I've been kind of like reducing the stuff in our house to maybe bring down the need to always be cleaning, right? Because kids are kids and they don't care. And so they'll throw things wherever, right? And mine are really fairly young, so they really aren't there yet. And so then if we reduce the things to be thrown around, right, the pickups less, all of that stuff. So I'm hoping that will make at least a positive change. And maybe a lot of this is he's feeling overwhelmed. And that's what I'm trying to gauge, is because like I don't want to be out here being like him,
right,
without also acknowledging that like he's a human, right? And like right, he's living an equally vivid life that as me. And maybe how he's experiencing his world, because we've had over this past 2.5 years very major changes, and like we moved halfway across the country away from all of his people. I went through breast cancer. Like it was a whole thing. So he could also be dealing with a depression, right? Is this a matter of, his mental health is really waning and he doesn't know how to talk about it because he wasn't given the resources, and me being this like overbearing witch in the background isn't helping, right? So then I want to be soft with him while also setting clear boundaries of like, I understand you're suffering and maybe going through a lot of stuff, but choosing to sit in suffering without working out of it is going to become a bigger problem, right? And I don't want to leave him in that depressive state if that's the case. And I don't want to walk away from him in his time of need, because that's literally the exact opposite point of marriage. So like, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So what you just did is both 1 and 2. You're saying, number 1, I'm going to help make sure we declutter our lives, and that might also help to then feel like it's more manageable. That's something I have control over, that I'm willing to do, that could help support what I want to have happen in the house, and that he might be able to take care of a little bit better. Second part is, can you change how you feel about it? You just did that by going, okay, I'm at least going to entertain the thought. It doesn't necessarily have to be true, but entertain the thought that his perspective is different than mine, and he may be in a ton of shame. I mean, I'm putting myself in his shoes right now. You got a sharp, smart woman who is now making more money than you, and you're married to her. But as a man, you generally feel like you should be the one that should help provide, and now you're not doing that, he's probably feeling some level of shame. He's probably feeling some level of fear. He's probably feeling, all the things that you just said, maybe with the change in the move and everything else that you went through. And now hearing that you went through breast cancer, he might be not just depressed, but he might also be worried about losing you. There could be a lot of things that are going on there. That's great exercise. So you just did number 1 and number 2, changing how you feel about it. But now you're coming back to also saying, I am myself and I have to live within my values. So now I could give him the benefit of the doubt, and yet I still have to have some kind of pathway forward, and I still have to have my own values that I have to set boundaries around. Right? That's perfect. That's right where you need to be in your pathway forward. The other 2 things that go along with this is that if you've done what you can, you've looked at alternative perspectives and chosen to agree or not agree with those perspectives based on the truth of your values, then you work into a place of trying to accept the things that you can't change. And then the last one is you can choose to stay miserable. Obviously, you don't want to do that. And that's where you're feeling frustrated, is you're feeling almost like your hand is being forced to if you keep growing, you can see yourself potentially needing to move on. And that means all sorts of different consequences for your kids, for your ideas about marriage, for, not leaving him in a lurch. And that's the hard part is, I don't know if you listened to the episode where Brannon talks about being on a bridge with a rope. Have you heard that analogy?
Yeah. Yeah.
It feels like you're the one that feels like you're on the bridge and you're wanting to hold the rope and you're saying, hey, if you're depressed, let's get some help. Let's do this. If you're feeling shame, you got to figure your shame out. Like, let's do this thing. And he keeps like hanging on, but in your estimation, hanging onto the rope saying, no, just hold this. We're fine, right? The way it is. Eventually you're going to get too tired and you're going to have to let go of that rope.
Yeah.
But then that leads to your original question, which is if you grow to the place where you're now at this crossroads and you either, in order to continue to live your values and wanting to keep growing, might need to make some hard choices, that pushes you back in some ways into your original question, into like the wrestle with God.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And why would God put you in a spot where the pathway forward would lead to this hard choice?
Well, yeah. And to some degree, and this is how I was raised, and I'm still active in my church community. And it goes against the values of my church, right? And it goes against everything that I was raised with. And I understand that there's free will, right, on both ends. And so then I struggle with this. Well, God, you say here, and everything that I hear is that we work through this. We turn the other cheek, because he who has no sin casts the first stone. And I sure as heck have sin, right? Sure. So I know that I'm not a perfect person, but I also know that my God would not put me in a relationship that wasn't good for me. And that didn't have some growth aspect inside of it, and that would, potentially cause greater harm in the long run. I have that issue where I believe that, God put us together and kept us together for so long for a reason. But now it's like, make the choice to go against everything that I've been told, or stay the course, but potentially be miserable. And in the process, like figure out how to not suffer when you feel like you're suffering. So
yeah, well, and maybe that's the frustration you're feeling, is the current status quo feels like suffering. The alternative feels like self-betrayal, which then has you questioning, why would God put you on this cliff? And is there some other way? Is there some other way to view this thing?
Yeah. And the worst part is oftentimes where I come to this almost nightly, right? Where I'm just like, what do I do? Right. And I call out to God and I'm like, please give me the strength. Please give me the wisdom, right? Like, show me what the right route. And ironically, this happened anyways, but, and it's so how can I move forward while honoring, what I've been told and myself at the same time, and not worsening his life, right? Because like ultimately, like my choice will affect him, and I don't want to be at fault for causing harm in someone else's life. And, so then I'm like, God, where do I go from here? Is there another route? Am I not seeing everything clearly? Right. Like, make
Yeah.
sure that I'm using correct discernment when I have conversations with him and try to take out these emotions. But ultimately, we're still here. And this is why we're having this conversation. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear the wrestle inside of you, and you're asking really good questions to yourself and to God. That wrestle is real. I can hear it. It's interesting because I hear that you're frustrated and angry at God, but I hear that you actually do have a pretty deep affinity with God and you feel really close and connected there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I might suggest something as an exercise. And this is maybe something that you probably already do, but don't do it quite as formally as this. But as you kind of continue your growth, there's like here's, do I grow and potentially outgrow him? Do I pause and stay here and maybe try to figure this out? Put both of those in a column, and then on the down column, put in 3 boxes. So you've got, do I stay here and do I go? And then put in the pros and cons of those boxes. And then in each, so there's 2 columns with 3 boxes down.
Mm-hmm.
What is God doing to me is the first question.
Mm-hmm.
What is God doing for me is the second question. And what is God doing through me is the third question. And then fill out every one of the boxes. So stay in my current relationship. What is God doing to me? Like, this sucks. Right? Right? But what is God doing for me with this relationship? Maybe there's something there. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then what is God doing through me? There could be a whole bunch of stuff that comes up there. But then go to the other side. Coming to this point of going to divorce, like, why would God put me on the edge of this thing? It's almost like I feel like I'm Abraham being told to take Isaac up into the mountains and sacrifice. Like, why would God do this to me?
Right.
But what is God doing for me and through me as a result of this wrestle that I'm having?
Yeah.
And that might just be something that if you have it staring back at you, it might feel or look differently than what you're currently experiencing. As you're talking, I just had this happen in my meditation this morning, actually, where I was thinking about like how paradoxical, let's just say, the New Testament of the Bible is. I was just thinking, like, in the very same stories, Christ can look up at somebody and say, "Hey, he who's without this first sin who's without sin cast the first stone." In a different story, he's going to the Pharisees, these leaders of the church, and saying, "You're a generation of vipers, hypocrites." He's turning over the tables in the temple, and yet he's with a sinner who's just been taken in adultery, and he's like, "Hey, your sins are forgiven. Go your ways, sin no more." It's like, how does God in the Bible, like, it's such a paradox of justice and mercy. Like, when is the right time for the mercy and when is the right time for the justice? Because both principles are true.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's the wrestle that I think, I'm sitting there thinking about my own life and going, I get it wrong all the time. I think I get it wrong all the time with my kids, with my clients, but I also think that that's part of what my job is in life, is to learn how to be better at knowing the paradoxes.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, the very thing that I think is the wrong thing to do because of how I've been taught is actually the next step into the wilderness that's a faithful step. And then there's other times where I'm told, "Hey, stay here and stay the course." And I'm like, "No, I don't want to. Like, this sucks."
Yeah. Yes.
It's hard to find those answers sometimes.
It is, and I think it's funny that you bring up the wilderness, because I feel like I've been in the wilderness for so long, right? Like, we talk about oftentimes, when he was out there and he was ready, wanted to go, like, when is this coming? And it took so long, and then finally it came. And I feel like I should have already felt that joy and happiness, because I have gone through the quote unquote wilderness. I mean, like, you want to look at the background of what I've done. That is really my wilderness, right? And here I am now in a state that is not nearly as bad. Like, it's not even close. And yet I still feel like I'm there, right? A lot of the time, I still feel that pressure and that anger. And actually, yesterday, do you know Esther at all? Like the Book of Esther? You know it
Yeah.
well? Oh,
Hmm.
all right. So you know gosh, I think it's like 3:10. It's when she goes to the king and he puts out the decree. He gives his ring to the guy, puts out the decree to kill all the Jews, right? Then Esther comes and is like, what? Absolutely not, right? And then the other decree goes out, and there's like this switch, right? Where initially it was this anger towards one set of people, then it switched, and then the anger basically was pushed back to the people that started the anger. And I feel like right now I'm kind of that at that in between point where I'm almost like the king, where I'm like, okay, well, tell me which one to do and I'll do it, right? But I don't know which one is better, right? Because they're both potentially harmful, because people are still going to get hurt either way.
There's going to
And
be
I felt,
consequence.
yes, right. And I felt
Yeah.
very, I got lost in the story a little bit yesterday, because I just felt so many angles, right? Like, am I not the person that's sending out this initial decree saying bad, wrong, no good, right? With being displeased with my husband. But am I not also Esther coming in being like, well, but he's got, so many redeeming qualities, right? So like, why would I push that out against him? And then, to God, I kind of feel like, tell me which one to go for, right? Like, what is the best for the people that are involved? And it's kind of like you said, this rock in the hard place, this proverbial cliff, right? And then I seek God, and I trust him. Like, I've jumped many cliffs before, right? And just, I have full faith, and I've landed every single time safely. And I just don't know this time if there is even a point to jump, right? Does that make sense?
There's even a point to jump,
Yeah,
meaning
like it's a direction.
you don't know which one is the right point to jump off of.
And is either of them the right point, really?
That's a great
Right?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think you're already on to some continued wrestle here. I wish I had the answers for you. I know that your wrestle with God is your wrestle with God.
Yeah.
But I love that okay, you've got these 2 points. And what I encourage my clients to do is when they have 2 points, to expand those points to 6 points. So, and they can even be ridiculous, some of them.
Right.
Like, okay, well, we're gonna get divorced, but still live in the same house. Okay, that's 1 point. You probably already were like, no, I'm not doing that, but that's
Yeah.
one. Like, come up with 6 instead of 2, because just the brain starting to go like, oh, it may not be an either or. There might be an alternative here that I haven't even considered because I'm so locked in on what feels like needs to be right or wrong.
Right.
Expand it to 6 or 10, and then re-look at it and see if anything feels different.
Yeah.
That's one way. The other thought that I had, and I don't know if this is true for you or not, what your relationship was with God, but sometimes when I'm really wrestling with things with God, I'm going there and saying, please tell me which way to go. Like, which one? I've got these two. Which one is right? And then I go for like days or weeks of just what I feel like is abandonment and silence. And oftentimes, if I take that back and I say, these are the two options I'm looking at, I'm going to go this direction for now, unless you tell me otherwise. Sometimes that facilitates new answers
Yeah.
pretty quickly. And then there's the third part, which I don't know, this one doesn't sit well with a lot of people, but sometimes I feel like I'm so stuck on needing a right answer that God's already given the answer, that he's like, I got you either way.
Yeah.
There'll be a different set of opportunities for learning and growth. And all I care about is your learning and growth, and make your choice, and I got you.
Yeah.
But if you're angry at God or feeling abandoned, then it's hard to trust that. That's the faith part of it.
Yeah. It's Peter. It's Peter walking during the storm on the water, right? Do
Yeah.
you trust me? Do you trust me? And that's a big battle, internally with me, right? Like, I
Sure.
often reference when I start having doubt, and I feel that doubt, and I'm like, am I being Peter right now? Am I, am I questioning whether I should be walking on this water, right? And that often kind of brings me back to being like, okay, but I know he's got me, right? And like, that's why I have that question, right? Because like, this is my father for all intents and purposes, because I didn't have one. This is my father. This is the person that's been guiding me in the writings and everything. And so I trust that the judgment is good and clear, but I also am angry. So then I want to question that judgment, right?
Sure.
And like you said, it's just a matter of writing it down, meditating on it, picking a direction even, and then seeing if there are clear red flags, right? Like, absolutely not. This was a turn back around now kind of thing. So
is your relationship with God the kind where you could go and express that anger?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel very free, I guess is the word to say, to talk to God about that. Like I said, I have a very intimate relationship with God because of where I come from. A lot of the times I did not have anybody else. It was literally just me and God. So there, and expressed anger, frustration, and a lot of it again is I'm thankful that I'm here, but I'm so mad that right now I feel, X, Y, and Z, or, X, Y, and Z is happening. And a lot of that then relieves that internal tension, which I appreciate. So.
Sure. Yeah. And then those feelings, I think, would have to be valid being in the spot that you're in. Again, back to Abraham, I can imagine him not just walking up the mountain with Isaac going like, I love God. He's the best. I'm sure he was like, F this. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, what the heck?
Right.
It's
my kid, man.
I think it's pretty normal. I know we're getting short on time. Louise, have we even touched on what you were wanting to talk about today? Has this been helpful at all?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. This has actually given me a lot of things, one, to think about, which is I'm great at, and then two, to actually put into practice, right? Like, when I'm getting frustrated in the moment, am I using my ability to see from his side, right? Kind of switching the angle of things. And then on top of that, I need to write down, right, my issues, but then also, right, like how am I being influenced by God at each level, right? Like, am I bringing meaning? Is he bringing meaning, or is there a purpose behind it? So I'm definitely looking forward to being able to do that.
Yeah. Well, awesome. You've been awesome today. I would love to, I don't know where you'll be at, 3-6 months from now, but I'd love if you ever want to come back on the show and give us an update on where you're at in your wrestle. That would be awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I will absolutely tell everyone about you guys. I think that you guys have great conversational pieces that are very, centered about the whole person. I think that a lot of times mental health is this or that, right? But spiritual health and mental health oftentimes go hand in hand. So to have that ability to really meditate on both is huge.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on the show. You are a gift to so many people who are going to be able to listen to this now. So thank you. Hopefully you'll get some value out of it yourself when you can go back and listen again. And anyone who's listening to this and found some value in it, please feel free to share. If you know people who would benefit from it, share with them. And if you want to throw a shout out to Louise, the best way to do that is through the reviews on whatever, podcast platform you're watching. So thank you for being here. Until next time, you guys, keep on keeping on.